Okay, testing the sound. Think we're live. All right. Okay, 1 minute. I think my chat is not working, so I'm gonna sign in. This is weird. It signed me out of the chat. Sorry about that. Okay, I think it's working. All right. We're going to be continuing to try to finish Spectre Comics issue 7, page 1. And I did draw a little bit since last week. Not too much though, but I've been working on another project this week, which I'll show you in a minute. I've started every Halloween, every October, I put a long drawing video up with just some ambient music. I think it's a cool video. I like personally listening to just ambient Halloween music in the fall. So I made my own video, and I've done one the last couple of years. The one I worked on last year was a drawing of the Corpse Bride. And here is that video. I'll just show a little section of it. And this is just me drawing the drawing and then setting it to copyright-free music that is, you know, ambient Halloween music. So if I just play a second of it here. And then I actually added a filter. So I took this drawing. It was probably about, pause it here because I don't know if the music's loud. All right, we'll get rid of this. Minimize that. So that was just a sample of it. The one I'm working on right now is a Jack and Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas. And somehow that turned itself back on. So we're going to just close it. Okay. So I just started drawing this over the weekend here, and it's going to be fully colored. Now, that Corpse Bride drawing I did took me about, I don't know, I would say it took me about, thanks, Carolina of the City, sound check. That drawing took me about 5 or 6 hours to do. I sped it up so it was about an hour and a half long, and then I set the music to it. This drawing right here, this Jack and Sally drawing with 0, took me, just to get to this point, about 2.5 hours, I think. And I'm going to color it in fully and add a moon in the background. Background's not going to be too crazy, just midnight blue and then a moon shining in the background is a nice backdrop to them. And then we're going to do a lot of effects. It's going to be a really cool drawing when it's done. I hope to finish it this week because I'd like to get it up. I wanted to get it up before October, but October is Tuesday, and I doubt I'm going to finish it before then because just now that the weekend's over, I don't have a ton to draw. What I wanted to talk about working on this comic page, excuse me, is two things. One, using gray tones. I've mentioned before, I don't use color on my comics. I do the covers in color. I don't do the backgrounds in color, I'm sorry, the page is in color. I did mention I someday may come back and color these in, but my comics are black and white. I really like the black and white, but what I do is add gray tones into the comic just to add some variety. I feel like if you have all white lines, I mean, look how busy this can get with all these lines on this this building here, and then even in the mountain, all the detail lines there. By adding, you can imagine, actually, I'll turn it off and we'll see what it looks like. Now there's no distinction between the building coming out of the mountain and the mountain itself. You can see how much more interesting that looks just by turning the gray tones on. And I did mention I do use 3 gray tones. I keep them up here so that I could just pick them easily with the eyedrop tool. And I keep 3, like a light, a medium, and a dark gray, and I just use them where appropriate. So I wanted to talk about where I would do that for the remaining part of this page. Most of the areas have been pre-selected; they're in there. But and the second thing I wanted to talk about was adding detail. So now the page is getting to the point where it's getting close to being done, and I'm going to start adding the detail into the page. Another thing I do is add white screens because I do a lot of drawing the full image. For instance, all the backgrounds are fully drawn, and then you put the characters over it. Now, let's say I wanted to shift this character in the panel. I don't want to have drawn the character here, and then I only drew the part of the desk that he wasn't blocking. By drawing the whole desk in the background, or the whole TV on the wall, or the door in the background, if I want to move that character around, it's already drawn. I just slide the guy over. I just use these screens to separate the character from the background. So that's where lines, layers, and layer order come into play. So the captain should be in front of the background. The background's the throne room background is is at the bottom of the layer. If you're familiar with Photoshop, you can't see my layers here. The layers at the top are above, and the layers at the bottom are below. And so, just look at it as each layer is above the one below it. If I have the captain here, I'm going to create a layer of screen where I could now go ahead and fill in the character to separate it from the background. You can see the desk behind him is in him. So I'm going to change to a white pen. A lot of times I will use the polygonal lasso and just select the area and go ahead and click around, and then I'll end up filling in with the paint bucket because it's much quicker. Plus, when you already have a white background, it's much harder to see if you're already coloring in a white area because it's already white. I guess I could turn off the white background layer and just get the checkerboard, but that would you don't necessarily need to do that, as you can't see. I do have a ton of layers in this drawing already. So going ahead and finding each layer that I need to turn off is a bit tricky. My next page I'm going to work on, I'm going to clean up the layers because I think I went a little overboard with the number of layers I have. If I hadn't mentioned this before, what I tend to do is I go ahead and I take the previous page I worked on and I copy it, and then I use it for the next page I'm going to work on. So page 1, I do a save as, call it page 2, and then a lot of times I don't remove all the layers before I start the new page because a lot of the layers get repeated. I do delete a lot of things, but I don't necessarily delete all the content, all the layers. So I think I've done enough pages in a row where it's gotten a little out of hand, and I'm going to have to go and clean it up and almost start from scratch, except for this stuff that's in my template already. I have a ton of layers already built into my template because I use all the time. An example of that is the word balloon layer, which already has its stroke settings on, the panel layer, which also has a stroke layer. Okay, so I've gone ahead and used the marquee tool, the polygonal lasso, to select all of the area. One more piece here is teeth. We're going to add to that. And it's not grabbing. There we go. Okay, and then now I could just fill that in, and I will separate the character from the background. Oh, I forgot to do his arm. This hand's not actually done yet, so I'm going to wait on that. But you can see now I can turn that layer off, and the background is still there. Turn it on, and it covers it. Now if I move this character around, I will not lose the background, and now that I'm looking at this, I kind of feel like it's a little too low in the on the page. I feel like maybe he needs to be, either the background needs to come down or the character needs to come up. So I might play with that. So let's talk about, again, what I mentioned before, where I want to add a little more gray to add a little bit of visual interest to the page, because again, black and white comics are cool, but adding the gray tones allows me to separate the line work from the other line work. You know, again, the perfect sample example is the background mountain with the mining facility. I'm going to use the middle gray in this example here, and I'm going to add some gray to the windows so they kind of stand out. We got circle window, and I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to call it window gray. Whenever I add a gray tone or a screen, I literally click on the layer that I want to put it on, and then I create a layer right below it, and then that becomes the layer. I always try to do it right below so that I like to keep the layers together that I'm working on that are part of the same part of the drawing. So the tower lines, and then the white layer that separates it from the background, and then in between that will be this gray layer for the windows. So we're going to go ahead and do that as soon as I finish naming the layer. And now I can do the same thing. I can use the polygonal lasso to select around the area. I could also color this in, but I feel like it's much easier to do it this way. And I want to color all the windows in. When I started using Photoshop for drawing, the polygonal lasso became one of the most frequent tools I used. It added I found a lot of uses for it, not just filling things in, especially things that are in odd shape. But I use it to sometimes create straight lines, or to fill stuff in that's odd shaped, or to just quickly highlight things. It's a really great and versatile tool. The funny thing, I've been using Photoshop for a long time, and it's very funny to see how much I don't know about the program. I know enough to do what I need to do, but I know there's 1,000 other features that it has that I could probably take advantage of, but I've never taken the time to learn. When I watch other people draw, you kind of pick stuff up, but I'm sure I use some techniques and some tools that some people don't use, or I use them in a different way. And I'm sure there's a ton of stuff I can learn from other people by watching what they're doing. I did take some online courses for how to draw, how to color with Photoshop, and I'm using Photoshop Elements. Photoshop, I do not have the entire Adobe suite or the full version of Photoshop. The reason is because I like to own the software that I buy rather than pay for a subscription, and it's kind of expensive to buy a subscription of Photoshop. You can't buy that program anymore. You have to buy the subscription. I can still buy a copy of Photoshop, and it's not that expensive, and you buy it once and you can have it. And then, you know, every couple of years I will upgrade my software. So it's 2024 now. I think this version I'm working on is 2022, so I'll probably upgrade at the end of the year. Just because if you let the versions get too old, even if they work well, I think sometimes they move stuff around or they change things. And for instance, if you waited 5 years to update your program, get a new version, you're going to find the interface is a lot different than you're used to. So I just to kind of keep current with where things are and the new features, I usually every 2 years will upgrade. Okay, so you can see how quickly I was able to infill all these windows. And at some point I may add some shadow. Now there's another section of this tower that has all this ribbing on it, and I'm wondering if I should add the medium gray there as well. Sorry, I thought my voice was getting a little scratchy there, but and I want to do the same thing up here. I didn't put as much detail because this part of the tower is much smaller. I do want to, oh, I just moved that by accident. Okay. I mentioned last week it's easy to select the layer with the move tool just by clicking on it, but sometimes you can click too hard, and what happens is it will shift. And I don't want to do that. So it's the facility, white screen. All right. So you can see here I shifted the white screen. So it's off a little bit. So I'm going to clean that up here, and then we'll add the gray to the windows on the tower. Because the tower is so small on the page, I know I'm zoomed into it, but when you zoom way out, that detail is not needed, like way out here, because it's such a small part of the overall drawing. So we'll clean up the white. And see how bad it is over here. I hate when I shift the layers, it's just so irritating. And sometimes when I have these black lines against a black background, like this star field, I will make a gray outline of that. I'll select the line with the magic wand, and I will highlight it like this, and I will add a gray, like a darker gray, so that at least it keeps the black line and the black background separated, because it feels like the line work gets lost. I wonder what this is up here. The logo. Little piece of the logo got caught over there. All right, back to the white layer. And clean that last bit up. And now we can do the gray windows. And what I might actually do here with the gray windows, I'm going to create a new layer again, because this facility is different than the enlargement in the small panel below this. We'll create a new window gray layer. And now I will select. Again, it's very handy just to keep these up here, so I can always go back to them and refer to them and select the exact gray color. It just keeps consistency. I don't want to have, I mentioned this before, I don't want to have like 50 different shades of gray. You know, with Photoshop, there's thousands of different color increments that you can pick, and I want to just keep a consistent 3 so that I just don't want to go from page to page and it just looks wildly different. I want to keep it as simple as possible. And I think by filling in the gray with a little bit of a border like this, even though there's not a window frame implied or drawn there, it's implied. So you can go do that on all these round windows. Nice thing about Photoshop is I can get down to 1 pixel and draw 1 pixel. I don't love drawing with pixels. I wish there was, I know I could use a vector program. I just don't know how to use that yet. I might someday want to train myself in that or get some training in it, but right now I've gotten, you know, I've gotten good results. Plus I want to finish this book pretty much the same way I started, so it would be weird to switch now. And filling the windows. So that looks pretty good. And then the final window. Now I could put some sort of glare or shine in the window, you know, and I may opt to do that when I get to the really finalizing the page and getting to the point where I want to see all the final detail on the page, and just not there yet. Just trying to wrap this up. And I will do the same thing with these. Because there's only one line here, I might as well just select the entire area. And I may even want to make it a little more transparent so it is not as dark. Let's see what it looks like. Down to 70%. That's not bad. It's still darker, but at least it's not overwhelming. So that looks pretty good. I don't really have any other windows on this facility. It's meant to be this imposing structure. So this design of this structure was interesting because I wanted it to be this grand entry for people that were getting unloaded, for the slave labor that was getting unloaded from the ships. They would come down the pathway from the ships, which is just down over here a little bit. And they would be led and then walk into this big entry, which looks like a bunker. And then they would go into the facility, be processed, and then further into the mountain was where all the mines are. And later in this issue, if you've seen my sketching pages, where I was working on pages later in the issue, like around page 29, 30, 31, there's a lot of drawings of what the mines look like. So the idea was that the facility was here in front and then into the mountain. That's why it's built into the mountain. Into the mountain is where the mines are. That all of the aliens around the galaxy that get kidnapped get brought here and sent to the mines. There's also gray on the captain's shirt underneath, so let's add that in. Again, picking the eyedropper tool. Now I can select that light gray, and this is where I wanted to talk about getting into the detail. There's a lot of detail and gray tones to add to the captain here. So if I select the captain gently, or go gray, he does have gray currently on his lens, on his mask. I did a gradient there with a little lens flare. I think I moved it a little bit. Nope. There we go. All right, so you got to be careful. The gray layer affects all of the other Gorgo drawings too, this gray. So if I move it, it's going to shift it all around the page. I want to be careful with that. But here, I'm going to put the gray below his armor, kind of like the shirt he's wearing below his armor. So I'm going to highlight around there again using the polygonal marquee. Again, a great versatile tool. you can use for a lot of things. Good for selecting an area and filling or moving things or whatever. It's great for things that are oddly shaped. So that's filling in that. And then his forearms are still with the white armor. I'm actually going to be curious when I color this character, and I didn't really think about his color palette. It took me a long time to figure out how to color the other Ori. I had them on my last cover for issue 6, and it took me a long time to figure out the color scheme I wanted to use with them, because I wanted them to look like they were the bad guys. I always think of Star Wars and the Stormtroopers. They are all white. I know George Lucas in an interview said that the Empire was always colorless, so they were always black or white. And then the Rebels were always like earth tones. I wanted them to be kind of like red helmets and dark clothing. So that's what I ended up doing. I don't think I have the cover handy to pull up to show, but I'll have it maybe next time. I feel like I have to clean up some of these lines, and I'll do that. But I wanted to focus on adding the gray where it needs to go. There. I'll delete. I feel like I don't paint a lot with the brush. I just kind of use the lasso tool to create the shapes I want and infill them or stroke or create straight lines with them. I know there's an easier way to create straight lines than I do, but I kind of like my method because it allows me to vary the line thickness. There we go. Okay. I really should clean up these abdominal plates. So the last couple of weeks I've been streaming for probably, I think the first 2 streams I did was about 30 minutes and last week was about 40 minutes. And I've seen artists stream for like hours, and I've never watched one that long, but I don't know how they do it. And I haven't watched it long enough to figure out if they're talking the entire time or if they're sometimes just drawing and not saying anything. It's very difficult to continuously talk while you're drawing because you're trying to think about what you're doing. So I don't know how others do it. I should probably watch some other streams and just see if they have stuff prepared. I usually write a bullet point list of things I want to talk about and then try to make it relevant to what I'm working on. And then sometimes I have some other topics that are not related at all, but might be interesting things to talk about. Maybe most live streamers have a lot more interaction with people and they don't need to have so much prepared, but I think that comes in time. Okay, I think that's cleaned up. I do enjoy drawing on the computer. I just enjoy the flexibility and the way, going back to this Jack and Sally drawing I did, I moved stuff around tremendously, and I drew each character on separate layers so that I could turn them on and off because I have Jack way in the background. I have Sally in front of him, and then I have Zero in front of both of them. And originally I had Jack a little too far away, so I had to literally take his whole drawing and slide it to the left so that I can move him over. And then I basically have the line layer for each character and then a white screen layer so that when they're overlapping each other, they're separated. And then obviously 0's a ghost, so you can kind of see through him. And I'm trying to figure out how that's going to ultimately end up once everything's colored. But I made the white 0 layer 76% opacity, so you could see through it. But the nice thing is that I did several things. I moved Jack's head. I literally just used the polygonal marquee and I highlighted around it, and then I was able to move just his head because I had placed it incorrectly on his body. That way I could shift his neck. Sorry, I'm losing my voice today, so I needed to take a drink. And then I wanted to move them closer together because I really wanted the back of his face to touch the back of her head, just like it is now. A little overlap there. So, you know, that's why I like drawing on the computer, because it just gives you this ability to move stuff around. When I go back and forth between pencil and computer, when I'm working with pencil and I make a mistake and I can't move something over, I have to like redraw the whole thing, which is frustrating. So I try to make all of those corrections in the sketch form before I get to the final pencils, because then it's easier to fix later on. Here's an example where I have the Ori soldier in the background behind the captain. I'm going to turn all of these Ori layers off, so he's just gone, because he's kind of distracting while I'm trying to draw the captain and fix his arm here. So I'm going to link those layers together so that they stay together and I don't make a mistake. I think I just moved something. There we go. Okay, I am doing this every time. Every time I click a new layer, it is moving that layer, and that's a little annoying. Okay, so now I can fix this hand. I did mention in another stream that drawing hands is super challenging for me. So I want to finish this arm, and I think the reason drawing hands is so difficult is because there are so many different configurations, and then just slightly changing the angle, it's just hard to figure that out. But I feel like there's an easy way to do it if you look at each part of the hand as a separate simple shape. Like the palm of your hand could be a flat cube. Each segment of the finger could be its own little cylinder. If you break it down into simple shapes, it makes it much easier to think about, but I still can't figure out how to do it right. And if the hand is in a weird configuration or a weird orientation, it's just so hard for me. I put the captain and the Ori with these, they have like these wrist, these things on their wrists, and then these elbow protection. I think I always do that because I hate drawing elbows for some reason. I feel like this is going to be a little bit of a challenge just to get this arm done. It's to the point where I don't want to draw it anymore. And then it looks like a chore. The nice thing about Photoshop is you can rotate the whole image. I always talk about, in a lot of my videos, I always talk about drawing, you know, using your pen to draw down like this, because you can rest your wrist on the tablet and drag the pen. And I feel like that gives you more pen control. It makes it easier. So if I need to rotate something so I can draw that down, if I have to twist my hand, I have less control. The lines go a little wonky, and then you don't get a good smooth, crisp line. But when I can put my wrist right on there and just drag down like this, it makes it much easier to draw. Please say I'm on the right layer. Okay. And I think I got the shoulder right. Got a couple layers here, a couple lines here that I need to clean up for the shoulder armor. I'm still getting used to drawing these characters. They just don't draw them enough. But I'm getting the hang of it. When I took this drawing offline and I drew it in my sketchbook, it really made it easier because I didn't have any other lines in the background that were throwing me off. Just keeping it simple right now. Add the detail later. Get the shapes down. Then you can add the detail. So right now I'm just worried about drawing the arm. The arm is going to be wrapped with some sort of like armor that's segmented. And because of the way the arm is oriented, I'm trying to figure out where you would see it. I think you'd see it down here, kind of like here. But I have to figure that out. So I'm going to just undo those couple lines. Nope. Okay. So I have this, I have the delete and undo are part of my quick hit buttons on my tablet. I have to be careful that it doesn't ask me to delete an entire layer when I'm just trying to delete some thing or undo what I just recently drew or erased or whatever. It was just asking me to delete the entire captain layer. Okay, once I get this arm done, I'll feel a lot better. Let's add the screen layer into the fins. I don't know where I came up with the idea of putting fins on these characters' arms. They seem very impractical because they bump into stuff all the time. So for me, it was just an aesthetic thing. Because I'm streaming, when I hit rotate, it takes forever to rotate this page. The file must be getting bigger. And I've saved this file on my external hard drive, so it's now accessing the hard drive while I'm streaming. It takes forever to rotate. I think it'd be pretty quick if I wasn't streaming. But that wouldn't be much fun, would it? The stream's getting close to 40 minutes now, so I want to get off the gray and drawing this arm thing and talk a little bit about adding detail in. And I'll use the other arm as a example of where I do that. So let's get this back oriented the correct way. And then let's work on the other arm. Okay. All right, so one more rotate and I think we're there. I used this drawing of the captain on the thumbnail of last week's video. What I've done with last week's live stream is I took 3 different clips from it and made short videos. And I think that's a good way to just make some extra content for the channel here. And screen some of these lines that are hanging out here. Okay, so Captain's arm is mostly covered by the edge of the panel, but I do add detail into, oh, I actually made his forearms gray too, so I need to color that in. Sorry, I'm looking at this reference image I have that I drew quite a while ago. And the Captain has these lines on his forearms and also on his gloves or his hands. So the detailing, and I'm not that consistent when I do this for multiple pages. You know, I don't have a set pattern, but I just kind of draw these lines in like this. And I just keep them really thin. I go back and clean them up if I need to get in here and go down, and I clean them up, keep them nice and straight. Again, super pixely. I just made another mistake by drawing that on the screen layer. There we go. Okay, so go back to the Captain layer. And the hands here, I'm going to delete this. This was supposed to be his thumb, but I think I can make an argument that his thumb would be hidden here. And his hands kind of like have lines on it like Spider-Man's gloves. Like that. Let's start at the fingertip. I just like adding these kind of details in. Just makes it more interesting to me. I try not to do it too crazy because then it takes too long to draw over and over again when you have to draw these characters multiple times. You take the character designs I do, especially the characters that have to get drawn a lot, I try to simplify them as much as possible. Kind of reminds me of Jeff Smith's Bone because those characters are relatively simple to draw. He draws them over and over again. And this also wraps around this. Could actually be one where it ripples with the knuckles. So it could be like that. Just imply that there's a curve there. That's good. So detailing like that, I sometimes add a little thing to the wrist. And then his uniform, and again, I mentioned that he's got the light gray on his forearms as well. We'll go ahead and use the polygonal marquee, select the entire area, do a quick infill. And here's where I made that mistake. Okay, so I originally drew these white lines or these black lines on the wrong layer. So I have to go up and move them up. You can redraw them quickly. Nice thing is I could just trace what I already did. Okay. Adding simple details like this make the drawing look more interesting without adding a ton of extra work. I mean, it's really simple to do this. I can select them. Okay, that's what I wanted it to look like. So, and his hand also has this gray on it. So I will do that again. Getting ready to wrap up the live stream, hitting about 45 minutes right now. And anyway, it was fun. Talked about adding gray tones, talked about adding detailing to your comics, talked about my Halloween upcoming ambient drawing, which will probably be done before next weekend. That's my goal. Also talked about taking little clips from these live streams and making videos out of them. I think that's fun, and I edit the clips down to get rid of the pauses and have them be about a specific topic. So I'm going to end it there today. Again, hopefully I get further on this page. I really would like to start page 2 by my next stream. But at the rate I'm going, that's not happening. But we'll give it a try. Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. And catch the clips or the replay. That'll be linked in the description. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.